I think much of what we discuss in life and much of what we believe is based upon our own experiences. And it's really ironic that I end up as a teacher. I hated school. I hated elementary school with a passion. In fact, my wife will tell you, I cannot remember to this day a single name of a teacher I had in elementary school. I remember one day of the year, I remember a field day, just living for that. Junior high, middle school as we call it now, was not much different. High school is more of the same, where I simply stare at that clock, 5 more minutes of agony before we had a 5-minute break, then another 45 minutes of the same. And that was pretty much high school for me. College in the late 60s, a lot of distractions, and I found a way to get through that. And after a short stint in the military and after a short stint in private business, I found myself, lo and behold, as a 6th grade middle school teacher. The day when we basically taught everything. We sent the kids out for art or for music. While I was going to graduate school at night. And I had a student, I remember this day vividly, I had a student sitting right in the front row whose face is right with me today. My classroom was pretty traditional. I had a blackboard behind me, my desk here, the students' desks facing me, and behind the students were a bank of windows, and those bank of windows looked out on the athletic fields. So on this beautiful morning, I heard a deer started running across the field with a couple of fawns. I said, "Look at the deer." So all the kids turned and looked at the deer. Oh, they're cute. And this one boy, Billy Crawford, 12 years old, sat there like this, staring straight ahead. I said, "Billy, why don't you turn around and look at the deer?" His exact words, 12 years old, "Mr. Scranton, if I turn around and look at those deer, you're just going to make me write about it." You see, Billy was having the exact same experience with elementary school that I was. While I was teaching, I was going to graduate school in the evening, getting my master's in education. And that was much of the same. The difference now were the classes were 3 hours long once a week. And it was 3 hours of listening to someone lecture to me. Often, not even the professor, a graduate student who would read the professor's notes. So I got to the very end. I had one class I had left to take. All my credits were done, and this class was totally elective. I could take anything I want. So I'm thumbing through the catalog of summer courses, and I come across a course in entomology, study of insects. So what do I know about that? Sounds interesting. But that's not what captured my attention. What captured my attention was this course started and ended all in the same week. Now the fine print went on to say that it began at 8 o'clock in the morning and ended at 8 o'clock at night. 12 hours in class, 60 credit hours. So I took a deep breath and said, you know what, I can get through this because I just want to be finished. So I went off to graduate school for this very last course with all my experiences of previous 18 years of schooling with just the worst sinking feeling of how awful this was going to be. This course changed my outlook on education. It changed my life as an educator, as a teacher, and ultimately, I believe, as a school leader. You see, this wasn't a classroom. It was a laboratory. The professors there, while they're teaching us about insects and entomology, were all about recognizing that science is a verb. We spent most of our time out in fields and meadows with nets, catching butterflies and identifying them, or waist deep in beautiful, pristine rivers and streams, catching the infant stage of insects as they were hatching. Fortunately, this was not black fly season. And then coming back and learning how to pin them and learning all the different parts of the body. And the final exam was simply, the homework, go home and turn the spotlight on and catch insects. This is nothing like I'd ever experienced before in school. And the final project was simply bringing in your different orders of insects from the different species that we had collected. And it really changed how I viewed school, where for me, learning had always been passive. Here was the first opportunity, after 18 years of schooling, where learning was active, where I was asked to use my imagination and be creative in my thinking and my thoughts. I was an artist at being anonymous in high school. Anonymity served me well in the military. I'm not sure how well it served me in school. And yet we have many students today in our schools who have anonymity down to a science because they're afraid to participate or because, like me, they're asked to sit, and sit. Elementary schools, when I was teaching, elementary schools, basically, you have all the students together and you have them for the entire day. As you go up the ladder, it changes. It becomes more compartmentalized, more departmentalized, and Sir Ken Robinson, whose video you're going to see later, and I think whose TED Talk is still the most downloaded TED Talk of all time, spoke at a conference I organized a year ago up in Burlington. And on the same theme, he said, a child's inherent creativity, a child's inherent curiosity is schooled out of them. And you think about it, as they go up the ladder, what happens? We move from this broad spectrum where a teacher is teaching all students and has the creativity to move things around so it's seamless between instruction in science and, say, social studies, to departmentalization. And it goes back, I mean, the model that we use in 90% of our American high schools, which is what I'm going to talk about because high school is what I'm most familiar about, is 100 plus years old. It was the early 1900s that the president of Harvard reached out to find a common denominator so we could measure how much time, seat time, all the high schools students were spending that were applying to college. It was called the Carnegie Unit. We still use it today. 120 credit hours, 120 hours earn one high school credit. Most high schools in this country define graduation as between 20 and 30 credits, between 20 and 30 Carnegie units. In order to realize that goal, we organize schools and around departments. We put math over here, we put science over here, literally down the hall and on this campus in different buildings. And we have a core of teachers that work in those departments. Those are incredibly creative people. Their curriculum, their relationships with one another are a given. But there's no conversation whatsoever across the parking lot, across the building, down the hall, between those disciplines. The only time these teachers from different disciplines talk to each other is at the monthly faculty meeting, or perhaps the morning when they arrive to school. And yet, they're all teaching the same students. They're all teaching the same students. So we start talking about creativity. How can we foster creativity in students when we, and I put myself in this category because I ran schools for 28 years, when we have the ability that we are running the schools, are so risk adverse, are so afraid to change this immovable mountain. And this immovable mountain is the schedule, the manner in which we organize learning. We've tried to climb the top of it different ways. We've tried to bore through it, looking for simple solutions to complex problems. We even lowered the summit so more people can reach the top. But in reality, there's only one solution. That's to blow it up. Just blow the damn thing up. And by that I mean the concept that schools somehow have to be organized in small pockets of instruction. We're asking students to, be a scientist for an hour and a half. Bell rings. Now go over here and think mathematically for an hour and a half. Or think about literature. That's not the way we run our lives, and yet is the way we organize learning. So where's the room for creativity? Oh, you go do that in art class. That's for music class. Think about our own children. I think about my grandchildren. They are, the creative play and imagination is just a part of who they are. And really good elementary school teachers are still recognizing that and bringing that out in kids. We knock them over the head with it. Doesn't mean that we have to start playing in high school. But what I experienced in graduate school as a 23-year-old, young man was play. And I can remember every single thing about that course, every single thing about that class to this day, because I was asked to play. I was asked to use my imagination. I was asked to be creative. So why don't we change? Well, this immovable mountain is frightening. It's the accepted norm. What will parents say if we get rid of the schedule? What will colleges say if we get rid of the Carnegie Unit? What will happen to our standardized test scores? And the real reason we don't change is because of fear. It's what we know. We're familiar with it. See, we in schools like quiet. We like routine. We like to walk down the corridors hearing silence because we assume that means everybody's in class, everybody's on task, everybody's engaged. Not the case, as we know. I was watching the clock. I guess countless students are doing the same thing as well. But what happens if we blow this mountain up and we want to bring more creative environment, more creative learning to our schools? It's happening. It's happening here in Vermont. I'd like to spend the last 5 or 6 minutes just giving you a sense of there is some hope here. And really, where it's really happening are in the alternative schools. Now, I define alternative schools as schools within schools, or perhaps even in some cases, charter schools. But they're schools that, for a small group of students, that they're either there because of need or interest or passion, where the following common denominators exist. Learning is incredibly personalized. There's 1 or 2 teachers that take on all the responsibilities of all different subjects involved. It is seamless. It is interdisciplinary, and it's all integrated. And if it's really, really good, it's experiential. Can you imagine students in driver's ed class just going to the driver's ed section of that, the classroom section of it, and learning about stopping distances and all the traffic laws they have to know to pass the written test, and never getting behind the wheel? Can you imagine football players sitting in the locker room on a bench listening to the coach or watching the coach on a whiteboard put up X's and O's and charting plays and never going outside to run those plays? That's what happens in school. The alternative schools are starting to shatter that. Right here, at Burr and Burton, the target program for students that really aren't able to deal with the hour-and-a-half type block. The mountain campus, where credits are embedded and students learn about the environment in a very natural way with all their English, history, math, science interwoven. And those examples exist all across the state of Vermont. But that's only for about 10% of the population of our schools. So how do we bring creativity and imagination back into our schools in this test-dominated, top-down approach to education? Everything right now is top-down. No child left behind, no child left untested, as most of us in education call it. Obama's race to the top, the Common Core, which is coming next, which is a common curriculum that all students must learn. No quarrel with the question of what we should learn, but never from the top down are we ever going to discuss how we should learn. So I offer the following. These examples are happening in Vermont. The concept of why should freshmen, high school freshmen, for that matter, 7th and 8th graders, who are now being put into this departmentalized, archaic system, why should they not be taught in an academy model? And by an academy model, I mean you take freshmen, 9th graders, I'll use Rowland High School, 250, 300 freshmen, all organized this way, with the same core teachers. They have the same 20 teachers that teach all the subjects, and those students are with those teachers all day long. Those teachers are their advisors, they are their mentors, and they are their instructors. You walk in the freshman academy, there's no clocks that tell you that I've got to be done in a few minutes and go on to the next subject. Everything is integrated. If you ask a student, what are you studying right now? They probably couldn't identify it as math or English or science. They're simply studying, fill in the blank, studying maple syruping, whatever it may be. Why can't all of our schools look like that? And then beyond freshman year, why can't we then organize them vertically? Some schools in Vermont are beginning to develop these academies this way. For example, Tom spoke earlier about STEM programs. Students are passionate about science, engineering, technology, and math. Focus on that academy. One school in Vermont has started a World Cultures Academy for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So all the students interested in political science, in international relationships, the global economy, world languages, take this track. You can call it a major if you want, but take this track where all the subjects have that focus, and seamlessly instruction in science, math, technology are all part of that. And a big component of all of it is the hands-on participation, the apprenticeships, the internships, and the community-based learning that those students do. But somehow, those of us that run schools have accepted the fact for far too long that the way we define learning works best for most kids. And the reality is, it's not true. There are those kids in every school, no matter what we throw at them, are going to excel. So, I end with a couple remarks. Dennis Littke is the founder of the Big Picture movement. Big Picture schools are alternative schools that are in high schools in this country, 2 of them right here in Vermont. They're now in colleges, which is really trying to transform learning around the 3 R's. I don't mean the 3 R's that we all grew up with. I mean rigor, relevance, and relationships, where students in a big picture school see the big picture, get the big picture, use their imagination around the themes of rigor. Obviously, rigor is the first key R. Relevance. What I'm doing in the classroom is relevant because I've been asked to use my imagination, because I'm passionate about it, because I care about what I'm learning. I didn't care about insects at all. By day 3, I was really into it. And to this day, I can tell you what a coleoptera means, a lepidoptera, and a hymenoptera. I mean, I know this stuff. Ask me a question about chemistry in high school. Or ask me a question about, To Kill a Mockingbird, I know that one. A Shakespearean play. I mean, it's just, somehow, a quick aside, we had a student here at this school who had finished all of her work, and she had 1 English credit left, second semester senior. She came to me and said, Mr. Scranton, and she was passionate about archaeology, I would like to spend the second half of my senior year in Arizona, where my uncle lives. And I'll live with him, and and I want to go off on digs. And all of her credits were done except one English credit. So we talked to her teachers, and we all agreed that we would certainly find a way to give her 4 credits, 4 Carnegie Units for this work, but she had an English credit. So she went out and talked to her teachers, came back to me a few minutes later. I said, what did they say? Everybody's fine except the English teacher has a problem. And I said, what's that? He says, what are we going to do about reading Hamlet? She couldn't go off there and not be educated if she didn't, as a senior in high school, read Hamlet. In reality, what she was going to learn on a dig with a literature that could be easily related to Native American cultures would have far exceeded anything she would have learned in a classroom. So, rigor, relevance, relationships, and it is my hope that around the corner, I feel much more optimistic today than had I given this talk 5 years ago, that around the corner, that creativity and imagination are just as commonplace, just inherent in our schools as standardized tests are today. Thank you very much.